Welcome to the Fail Forward podcast. The purpose of this podcast is change the negative stigma around failure into a positive. Failure is only a negative if we do not learn from it and we give up. Welcome back to the Fail Forward podcast. We have the awesome Liam Doe with us today. He is the co-founder of the Old Bond Store, which is a fantastic co-working space which has a hive of businesses that work together. So Liam, welcome. So let's go on a bit of a journey. How did you get into business and where did you first start?
I think for a lot of people, maybe sport was the first thing. I think at 10 years old, my mum forced me to go and play for a football team, which turned out to be quite a good football team, and made some friends there. And I think even at a young age, I was ultra competitive. And we had we ended up playing at Southampton for a few years. And everyone around me everything we did really was just ultra competitive, which I think is important in business. So that kind of evolved. Went to university, got a bit of a Mickey Mouse degree, communication design. Didn't really like it, but quite liked the commercial aspect of learnt about how people buy stuff, marketing and stuff like that, and trying to read people's minds. I think the dissertation was about why Bacardi Breeze. I don't know if you remember that. But yeah, why people buy Bacardi Breeze, and that was all interesting to me. And then while I was at uni, I got a job at MFI, selling beds and sofas and stuff like that on commission, which I absolutely loved, and was quite good at it, earned a full-time wage on a part-time kind of job.
Nice.
And that was the bit that kind of, because I think a lot of people that run businesses, they end up coming from kind of their own businesses, kind of sales backgrounds, because it's that competitive thing. Travelled the world for 6 months. My wife had a fantastic time, and then got into recruitment, which was the first way in.
Which is very salesy as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, it's ultra salesy. I hated it. I did it for about 2.5 years. Absolutely hated it. I was shit at it because you couldn't, it was all on the phone. It was high pressure. And yeah, that kind of got me into that kind of process, and I was a bit disillusioned. Then I got a job actually working for a kitchen franchise, a large kitchen company in France. And my job was I was too young really for the job. They're paying shit money, so they wanted to employ me because it was cheap and easy. But from my degree background, my MFI sales and stuff like that, I got into the nuts and bolts of business, because the kitchen franchises were all ex-designers, kitchenette designers really, didn't really have a clue what they were doing in business. And they come to me and say, right, we need to secure location. I had no idea how to secure locations. We need to work out what we're putting in the shop, how we market the shop, how we run our cash flows and all that sort of stuff. So I was thrown into it. And first year, absolutely achieved nothing, was shit. Didn't really make any grounds on that. But what I realised is in business was, if you narrow your offer and make it nice and defined and clear, and you just stick to the game plan, and that's what we kind of did. And the next 2 years I was with them, we ended up opening up these specific franchises. We had a lot of success. And I think towards the end of that, I think I was there about 3.5 years. Towards the end, I started to decide I could be doing this. Like these people I'm pretty much holding their hands right the way through the process, and watch them make lots of mistakes. And I had probably 12, 14 accounts I was looking after.
So in that first year, and you mentioned that you sort of just didn't really know what you're doing. How did you work it out? How did you go about, finding that success that you then created with those accounts?
I think what I did was I worked back. So basically this was a high value kitchen product. You're talking like 20 years ago, like 20 grand plus kitchens, 25 grand plus kitchens, a luxury product. And we had a kitchen franchise business in France. It was huge. They had like 300 branches, TV adverts everywhere. But for these places to succeed, they needed to sell 12 kitchens a year, and they would run a nice little setup, a little shop. So we just tried to keep it simple. So that one of the biggest challenges in these showrooms was you got 2,000 square feet, and I say 800 square feet in the little showrooms, the boutique ones. I want to put 12 kitchens in there. Why do you want to put 12 kitchens? We do 200 different variations of kitchen. Well, I want 12 kitchens so everyone can taste, feel, touch the different things. And it was all about what I learned from my degree, the essence of why people, it was a lifestyle purchase. They wanted to buy because Mr. and Mrs. Jones up the road they wanted a better kitchen than them.
Yeah.
And the company behind me, they were all for about this lifestyle thing, which kind of resonated. And actually, one of the key examples, let's put 2 kitchens in, but let's make them absolutely fucking spot on. And what I learned in that process was you can make it as complicated as you want to make it, but basically, the simpler we make it, the whole process. So I think from my perspective, what I learned when I kind of set my own business up is just keep it nice and straightforward. And I think a lot of small business owners, they created a load of moving parts that when you actually looked at it, there was just a series of really bad decisions. And before you knew it, you had let's say first year they're doing £500,000, 400 grand, and they've got 8 staff. They're then doing bathrooms. They then decided that the Antico flooring guy comes in, so they're now doing flooring. Their marketing strategy is when someone comes in and they got a shiny, glossy magazine, let's just stick it in there for £500 and hope. And I think those 3 or 4 years on someone else's buck, really, I was paid shit, but actually when you look at it, the education that I went through was pretty amazing. And I was way out my depth. But going back to my degree days, it taught us that if you're going to sell a product, just keep it nice and simple.
So you were out of your comfort zone.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, and I think for me, I've always been really comfortable outside of my comfort zone.
It's where we grow the most, isn't it? Outside your comfort zone. So yeah, that's awesome. And like you say, I think the saying in business is a confused mind never buys. So the fact that you were trying to simplify it and simplify that space makes a lot of sense. So what happened next then?
So I was tearing down the M27. My dad had a couple of failed businesses before, but kind of like a rough and ready entrepreneur really in the construction industry, kind of a tools guy, loved working out on site and stuff like that. And he developed this kind of like small construction operation. It did quite well. I think it was his 3rd or 4th attempt at it. And it for whatever reason, maybe he was a bit older, a bit wiser, and it was going quite well. But the challenge was he didn't want to be a business owner. He didn't want to be an entrepreneur. He wouldn't even know what it was. So he was ranting down to me, I've had enough of this. There was a few quid in the bank. I'm off. I'm shutting it down. And at that point, I think if that conversation never happened, I'd still done it I'd have found something. So I said, well, okay, let me come down and have a look at how it's going, and I'll have a look at the numbers and stuff. And I mean, the deal that was done didn't even make any sense. I mean, it was like 100 shares. Like, it was just really a basic, like, tag packet calculation. And he said, well, actually, I've got another guy who's been doing some work for us, a bit of pricing work, who also had a senior job in London, who's Richard, who's my business partner today. I've split it up in 100 shares. This is the amount of money. And I went back to my wife. I said, right, I'm getting a bank loan. She was like, what are we doing? We ain't got any money. Like, literally, what are we doing? So I went and got a bank loan from Barclays. We just moved into our flat, and we got into it. And Richard did the same. And then within a couple of weeks, my dad moved away. I don't know whether the agreement was we were all going to do it together, but within very shortly he'd moved away, which was fine. And it was a bit of a strange one actually, because I think the VAT man turned up and said, "You owe us a few quid." I think fundamentally the business was near on insolvent before we'd even started, but we did a deal with the VAT man, and I said to Rich, "Well, we're in." Do you know what I mean? And I don't regret it, and I don't regret what my dad did. Actually, I think it was good for us, and we just said, let's just have a stab at it. And we took the business. I think it was doing, I don't know, hundreds of thousands, probably a few hundred grand, couple hundred grand, 300 grand, and we took it to 5 million in about 4 years.
Wow, so going.
Yeah, and lost it in 6 months.
Yeah,
It was incredible. I mean, the challenge I had with it was we weren't equipped. You talked about that being uncomfortable. I think historically, I enjoy that bit. I always describe it as when you, like the road runner, when you run off the cliff. For me, all the bit building up to run off the cliff it's to get that euphoria moment when the road runner looks round and then you drop.
Yeah.
And that is a really short part of every transaction and business deals that we've done. That little bit is the most, it's like a drug. So when me and Richard sat there, the VAT man's there and they're saying, right, you do this. And we're going, well, we don't even know how we're even going to run this business. That's the most euphoric part of the process.
Problem solving is at that point, isn't it?
Everything is based on kind of the strategy goes out the window and it's working for a process. So today I'm just going to sort that VAT man out. Tomorrow I'm going to make sure that person turns up on time, right? The next day I'm going to do that. And I think the difference between an entrepreneur and a good business operator, and I can spot the difference mile off now, an entrepreneur likes chaos. Like they actually thrive on chaos, and that's where the best work happens. And a business operator is way more, and I think mine and Richard's relationship over time is I've been the crazy person that creates what we've created now, and Richard comes in later on and goes, right, let's flatten it and let's try and work out whether there's something here that we can do. So yeah, we took it to £5 million. The recession hit 2 years before we actually went bust. But fundamentally, my dad wanted more money down the line because we collectively increased a lot of value into the business. Arrogantly, we went, look, we're making money hand over fist. It's just, yeah, makes sense. Let him have the money. And then we hit recession. So we were running a £5 million business on fumes. And we did that for nearly 2 years. And that was a tough place to be.
And how did that feel for over that 2 years?
I think the energy of a 29, 30-year-old kept the wheels on. I'd recruited a young team because I couldn't relate to old. I was trying to be this disrupted, arrogant little prick, really. And we just kept evolving it. So we had a system of managing the suppliers. We would chase money down. And I think the problem was we were in an industry where we were dealing with all the market leaders. They were very aware that we could deliver, but they were also very aware how exposed we were. And one of the key mistakes we made at that point was, like, at one point I remember being with Speedy, the rep with Speedy, because what happened was when we got this massive contract in Islington, I mean, how mental is this? I'm 29 years old. We got this 1.5 million quid contract in Islington, but with I think Balfour Beatty or someone like that, which we're delivering, by the way. We've got 50 grand a week's worth of kit on site. But because we were growing so quickly, we hired it all. So, and I started to work out, hang on a minute, that disc cutter, if we'd have had it for 12 weeks, we'd have paid for it. And then when a job finished, there was 4 disc cutters missing. So not only have we paid for a disc cutter so we just grew too quickly. As a learning curve, you just learn to manage chaos. And you actually, towards the end, the wheels start to fall off. We had someone that bounced a check on us, and we had a payroll to hit of about 50 grand for that week. And you sat on a bench outside going, and the challenge is, which anyone that knows that's been in that situation at the time, that there feels like there's no way out, because you just can't. Every day you just get up 5 o'clock every morning and just go again. So I think when you're younger, you've got that energy to do that. And actually, I always remember, and I'll say this because it's a bit of a kind of thing, but me and my wife split up. We were a year into our marriage, and we had a dumper stolen in Islington. And basically what they'd done, it's one of these council estates, they'd rolled a dumper into one of the garages, and it was gone. And I got a call early in the morning to say, look, we're missing a dumper. And bearing in mind, we didn't own the dumper. So that was the problem. And I was ranting, and my wife said to me, like, can you just shut up? Like, it's like 5:30 in the morning. And I went at her, and shortly after that, she left. And we're still together now, which is why I tell the story, and she'll probably listen to this and laugh. And I said, look, is there something going on in the relationship? We're only a year into our marriage, been together a long time. And she said, I don't think you'd care if I went. I said, I don't even think you'd even know. And I was like, and that was a bit of an eye-opener. But the business went into administration, which was messy, horrible. Wouldn't recommend that experience. Don't let anyone tell you that that's a easy experience to go through.
So when it was going under, what were your feelings? Did you have anxiety, stress? You know, it was from my experience when my business went under, it was just so much pressure. And you know, I was a similar age, and you say you're resilient, but there must have been a lot going on at that point.
it became a bit surreal in the end, because as a business, we'd never actually enjoyed. It was never about the money anyway. I didn't really care. It was kind of a scorecard and a sport for me. And then it all becomes very real, because the 50 grand invoice that just looks like a bit of paper is actually 50 grand. And then you start to, I remember there's a time we sat down and started to look, we got nothing, right? So literally, but even there's enough that they can take to, that makes it depressing. And when I came out of the administrator's office, and they do a good job, administrators, but be aware that they're agendaed. And they do, and it was a relief that actually now, tomorrow we're going to go in, we're going to make all the staff redundant. We knew that they were going to be happy, because they knew they're not stupid. They knew that we were struggling for some time, but they were going to get, there was enough money available to get them what they needed. But it was, that was probably the first night you sleep. But then I don't think we were struggling for 2 years, but it was still a game for about 18 months. And what happens is, with a balance, and I always say to a lot of young business owners, what's your walk away money? Forget about EBITDAs, resale values, change your life, all this nonsense you see on LinkedIn. Forget about who's going to buy business. No one's going to buy a business unless they're going to buy it. So what does the walk away money look like? And what that means is, what is the balance sheet? Give everyone their money, give everyone else their money. And when you're struggling with what me and Richard, we were fighting for our lives, and we had some really good wins, and then it went cash positive. So I don't know, you're then walking away, if you shut the doors at 100 grand, divided by 2, 50 grand. You sold your plant and all the other stuff. It goes minus 50 grand. So now it's chipping into your own life. And I always say to people, forget about all the other stuff. What's your walk away line? And that's the bit early on in business you should protect. Because once that gets away from a year's worth of income, 2 years worth of income, you can start to be more proactive in your decisions. And I think the challenge for a lot of businesses that are in that muddy area for about 5 or 6 years that are trying to grow, you're not making those constructive decisions. So we went from that failing, we kind of flipped it and then said, well, we can't compete with our competitors because we're not good at that. Let's supply them with some great labour, because one thing we were very good at, we weren't particularly good at getting paid, but we were quite good at delivering the work.
Can I take you back quickly? So at that point, it all goes under, and the administrators come in. What is it that stops you from just giving up and going back to your previous job or back to a career, rather than, what do you think it was that led you on further?
I was never even a consideration. And I always remember my wife, when we were having some difficult times, she said, well, it's no problem, you just go back to do it. So I never brought a massive income in, but we always had quite a nice life. Well, you just have to go back to getting a job. And I was like, no. And it kind of resonated with me. Absolutely no way am I going to go and work for somebody now. And it's that, for me, is always, I've never really been that motivated by money, but the idea of having to work for somebody is the most demoralising feeling ever. And obviously I'm surrounded now by a lot of business owners, and that's the bit that is the scariest bit. So when you say what motivates me, is having to go and work for somebody.
And do you think it was also, you mentioned right at the beginning about school and having that winning mentality and wanting to win everything. Do you think part of it was that you wanted to carry on trying to win? Did you feel defeated once the business had gone?
I think the challenge, for me, everything that I've done in business is a part of my identity. So it's not about, some people, like I've got friends who've got fantastic jobs and they go, right, yeah, when I get home on a Sunday, like I'm on holiday tomorrow, phone's off. And for me, it's that scorecard, you're right, it becomes part of my identity. Like anything that I do in business is reflective of me personally. And I think at the other end of that scale, ultra successful people, they're able to also break away from that, and it becomes a commodity. But I think a lot of small business owners, it's a competitive edge. You want it to win because you want to win, and those two are connected. And when you're in Turkey on holiday or the Maldives, wherever you are, when that phone rings, people that aren't business owners don't understand that it's a passion. So it's part of you're going to take that call, not because you have to, because you want to, really.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of business owners are pricks. Like, I don't think we are particular. I think we're very selfish. And I think the more successful you are, in all fairness, the more selfish you probably are, because you have to be. And then you build a world around you that suits that selfishness. And people, so yeah, that's always been a challenge for me, is to kind of include everyone else. And I'm an only child. I don't know whether that's got a thing to do with it, that I've always wanted it my own way. But yeah, there's some shaky decisions I've made in the past. I've gone, hang on a minute, that's pretty fucked up. I've done that. And then you talk to other business owners and they do the same crazy stuff.
I love that. It's a completely different concept, because a lot of people just say my business consumes me and they almost blame the business. But I love your honesty in the fact that you're like, actually, business owners thrive on that. You know, they almost want to be consumed by their business because that's part of their identity. So I love the honesty you've got there.
I think the honesty as well, unless we'll come to it, but the honesty is now I have 20 conversations every day now with business owners, more successful than me, less successful than me, but they're all incredibly selfish. And they hide behind, well, it's the business, innit? Well, you fucking created the business. so actually, and I think that self-awareness is really important, that you're selfish, because even going into relationships, children, family, friends, at the end of the day, you have to be self-aware that what that's doing to other things and the sacrifice you make. And we all talk about all the fancy stuff. 99% of business owners got less money than people who are in jobs. It's not this. If you went through the statistics, 9 out of 10 fail in the first 3 years. It's not a great statistic, but it's not about that.
No.
And we hear this lauded out on LinkedIn, and even people now like, oh, look at my car and all this stuff. It's all bullshit. And actually, we all do it for our own self-worth. So yeah, that was kind of my spin on that.
Nice, I like it. So the business goes into administration, and then you and Richard get together, and then that's when you start trying to do something slightly different. So where did it go from there?
Well, one of the big things about businesses, and I see it again all the time now, is you need assets. You need stuff of value, because when you make the big decisions, the assets are going to bail you out. And I learnt that some of the businesses now that are household names locally that we were bigger than at the time, they basically bought their machines. So over 3 years, you got an excavator over there. So when you hit shit times, you can lend against it. I mean, and it's an asset. And one of the things me and Richard realised was when we set out again, we said, right, let's just keep it small, me and you. And every time the business chucks out some money, Liam, you go and find some stuff to put it into that's more steady. And we got into property early on. We bought a little terraced house that we couldn't really afford, but we muddled through, got credit cards and stuff like that. And that kind of just snowballed. But what happened was, when we grew the business before as a commodity, we decided, actually, fuck the commodity, let's just get it as a bit of a cash cow. And we would start to forecast everything then and what it would kick out. And we got 1 house, 2 house, 4 houses. And then and then they went up in value. So then when we refinanced them, and as you know, Henry, the modelling is just, it's a great model. Like, because you're earning, if you buy right, you're buying on the do up. If you do it well enough, you can get most of it out, take it to the next one, and then you're earning again because you're renting it. And that got us out of jail. We did that for about 6 years. Started a small tax business for lads that work for us doing tax returns, and that was relatively successful. We sold out of that about 2 years ago. And then we kind of changed our mindset as business owners to kind of like just scrapping around really for money. And then the money kind of compounded, because there's two different, like a property developer is a very different model to someone running a digital agency. The end product might be the same, but it's a different mindset. And we became almost like property minded, asset minded. And that took us, we did that for about 7-8 years. And that was some of our best times, actually. We ended up buying an office that we still got now. And the guy, we couldn't even, like, we were making our own sandwiches. And when we talk about business ownership, that was the bits I really enjoyed. The camaraderie and the, how much did we make this week? Right, okay, right, that's good. And trying doing deals and stuff like that. So yeah, that was probably till about 5 years ago. And then the problem with property was the licensing around HMOs, which is what we got into, changed. And I think deep down I got bored. It was boring. And I missed the business ownership, the entrepreneurship. Doing deals is great. And I admire those people that have got 200 property portfolios. It's fucking boring. Because once you've got that model, it's a production line. You've got people feeding you leads. It's not really that dynamic. And I missed that. And I think boredom got the better of me. And I went to Richard and said, I've got an idea, which is maybe what we're gonna talk about.
Yeah. So I just want to take you back slightly. So it's really fun. It's a really similar journey to me when I lost everything, and then you want to create security again, don't you? So what will you say, your top, 2 or 3 learnings are from that first business and what you learned from the first fail point of that business going under?
It's no rush. There's no rush. Build great advice. Get the right people around you early, because that is just absolutely essential. If it's just you and your mate in a room, basically blowing smoke up each other's arse, it's probably not a brilliant dynamic. And the other thing I'd say is just diversify and build your assets before you start doing stuff, because it's easier to move forward than to unwind stuff. And actually, there is no rush. I mean, the first 5 years of a business can, if it's built correctly, can accelerate growth over 18 months. But you don't want that growth too early, because you've not got any systems or structures or anything like that. So I think the 3 things are: get the right people.
Yeah.
And the right people filter is awful. I see that. I've got my mate Dave. He used to be an accountant, so he knows about what the fuck does an accountant know about business? Yeah. Like, that's not their job.
Yeah, no.
Their job is to tell you the numbers. So that's really important. And then assets, make sure you've got some stability for your family and yourself, and just take your time. Because one thing I know about having spent a lot of time with business owners now, the most successful ones, they're so inquisitive, consistently asking questions. How does that work? We've just got a member that does Bitcoin, and we filled the room with 10 business owners. God, like, they're just asking all these questions. And don't be scared to ask as well. Don't sit in the room and go, I don't really understand that, I won't say nothing, because I think a bit of a din. The most successful ask the most questions.
100% agree with that. Yeah, I love that. And that the one with surrounding yourself with right people really leads us into the next stage of your business
That
career.
wasn't loaded, by the way.
No. But you're so right. It's so right. There's all those sayings about you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Your network is your net worth, and things like that. And we'll talk about it now. I think it's poignant to do so. So at this point of your boredom of property, you then decided to do something different. So tell us how you got to that and what that idea is and what you're doing now with that.
I'm sat in a coffee shop in Southsea. I'm sat there regularly. We got 2 offices, one in Regis at Lakeside. We got our tax office, and I just didn't go in there. I couldn't see the point. With technology that exists today, like, you start to think, hang on a minute, we can do that now. QuickBooks is in the cloud. We don't need to come together for that now. We're just looking at online. And
what sort of era? What date was this? This is pre-COVID?
5 years ago.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
So if you can remember, dialing back, I worked for a French kitchen company.
Yeah.
My like PA was in France. So I got very used to working. I mean, I used to have a dial-up that you used to have to go home, dial it in, and then it sent all your emails. Do you know what I mean? I remember driving around housing estates trying to pick up people's Wi-Fi when that got invented. So I was part of that process. So I'd never really had an office or worked anywhere specifically. I was always back to France or whatever, or in London or wherever. And I was in a coffee shop in Southsea, and kind of looked around, and there was 2 other business owners, like successful business owners, live locally. And we got to know each other, like, vaguely, because I wouldn't sit in their seat, they wouldn't sit in my seat. And when you think about it, I was spending 15 hours a week in this place, and I've got 2 offices, a desk that's basically in a proper office. So I kind of said to Richard, I was getting a bit disillusioned, probably deep down bored of doing houses. And I said to him, right, I think there's an opportunity to basically dial up that mini ecosystem. And then I Googled it, went up to London, spent 6 months in London I think Richard was thinking, where is he? What's he even doing? And I was in London for about 6 months, went to Bristol, Brighton, Bournemouth, and just went round all of these. Never heard of co-working, didn't even know it existed. And then went from co-working, WeWork and those sort of products to then didn't quite get that because WeWork's more corporate spend. So I don't know, you're a consultant for IBM, you're in London, rent a desk. And I just it didn't relate to me. And then I think I stumbled in a couple of members clubs up there, which weren't deliberate business ecosystems, but organically they became a place where people drank coffees and stuff and worked and had meetings. And I remember phoning Richard and said, I've got the idea. I know now what it is. And because we're an asset-driven concern, we started to map out, or I started to map out what that would look like by owning the building, where it should be and all that sort of stuff. And then we just developed the idea from there. I started to map out. And it's quite strange when a new category, like a plasterer, there's a rate. It's 150, 200 pound a day. And you're going, well, what do we charge for it? And then you start to look at, like, the bit I'd never really understood, and it's still baffled me today, where we're moving out of COVID, desk rental. Like, why the fuck would you have your own desk in a shared area? It didn't make any sense to me. So that was a decision that we made early on, that we're going to create a venue where you don't actually have your own space. So the whole methodology is you have to basically turn up and sit where you like a gym.
Yeah.
And that was what we did. And we found a building in Southampton, and we walked in, and it was a shitty warehouse, and the ceilings were too low. They still are. And Richard came out, and I always remember we got in the car and he went, that's something to think about. And I was like, no, that's the one. That's the one we're going to start with. And he was like, okay. And then I kind of went away, and we had a build cost. Then we got some really cool designers on board. And then the build price just went up and up and up. 3 times what it was originally. But as the product built out, we refined the offer. And the original offer was, you've got an office, you've got loads of noise in there, no one wants to go in there. So as a business owner, you have a second resource that is within the vicinity that you can disappear to. You're looked after in a hospitality fashion. But the fundamental thing is how we've got to know each other. So when you're in there, there are people that are dealing in 7-figure businesses plus 8-figure businesses, that when you're having a shit day, as we did when it was just us two, because I never developed a network. I was too busy, didn't have time. And that was the kind of concept. And that's kind of where Old Bond Store is now. And that a lot of people say about COVID, oh, it's a good idea with COVID. No, we were building this 2 years before COVID. And early on, we kind of marketed to all the very obvious suspects in the local vicinity. And they came in and just didn't get it. They were like, what? We're invoicing, like, we're a solicitor, we're invoicing like 250. Why would we even waste our time coming here? And for the first 2 months, it tanked, really. To provide the right service, and it was costing us 20 grand a month to keep the doors open. I remember Richard saying to me, we were 3 months in. We opened in November, March, COVID, we locked down. And I think we were early February, and we had 5 members, and it's 300 quid a month. And one thing I didn't want to deviate, going back to my degree days, was keep it simple. And I remember being in London, and this guy in a co-working space, he had 15 different rates. Like, this is a desk. If you have that desk, which is over there, it's slightly different. It got more and more complicated. He said, and we burnt 60 grand like that. and I think we had about 150 available to us, just put to one side. And he went, what are we fucking doing? Yeah. Like, literally, we're burning money. And
so you must have had some doubts at that point. How were you feeling? Were you still determined?
I've done it again.
Yeah.
I've done it again. Yeah. I've done it again. And Rich has been amazing because he's a great operator. Like in an FD fashion, operational, commercial, he's amazing. And like, I thought, fuck, like, this stupid idea. And it was on a grandeur scale beyond, because the other challenge we had was no one wanted to lend to us to buy the building. No one wanted to lend to us to fit it out. No one wanted to finance it. No one could give a shit. No one even understood what we were doing. We didn't even know what we were doing, really. And so we had to refinance a load of other stuff. We're talking way beyond 7 figures of our own cash. And my wife, in the rear view mirror, I've got that experience. And then we just kept stuck with it, and we didn't deviate. One of the key things we did, one was, you can't have we're not boxing off offices. You come in, you pay your money, and you sit where you want. And we were brave with that. 2, 12-month contract. We're not deviating, because the way that I saw it, if this is going to be as special as what it was in that coffee shop, it takes time. And then it just was a bit odd, really. We shut down in February. We shut down about 6 members, but then March, 2 more joined. And then I think we were even locked and another one joined. And then it just, it was progress up and down.
I think that one of those people was me as well. I think that's when I joined. Yeah.
I think what we did at that point, and then we reopened, and we couldn't afford to reopen really, because when we first shut, we only shut because for 8 weeks the furlough money kicked in, so we could park a lot of costs, and we had 5 members, so 1,500 quid was coming in, 20 grand going out, and it just didn't make sense. But then when you joined, it became a bit of a legacy. Then there were times, because obviously you're going through the same shit as what we're going through, and I had members at that period, like I had to sit them down, get them a beer, and having been there before. And what I found was, at that point, though, this wasn't my first rodeo.
Yeah.
So you start to make logical decisions of everything. Right? How's my mortgage work? How does that all work? And that was our legacy, really. So I think at that point it wasn't worth staying open. But Rich said, "What we're going to do? We're going to shut." I said, "No, we're not fucking shutting now. We're gonna keep going." And I think we went to 20 members, and then 25, and then Boris shut us down again, and then we kind of it just kept growing, and then 12 weeks ago, it's just turbocharged now. And as a business now, we are the biggest business ecosystem in the area. And the whole concept is that 6,000 square foot of space. You sit where you like. It's got all the resources. It's got the look of a 5-star hotel. It's music, experience. But we've built this really solid community that are ultra loyal. And they push the envelope of where it's going to go next. And I think you said to me the other day, like, I've spoke to that person, I've had this conversation, I've had that conversation. For me, I don't even know 90% what's going on. And I think for businesses, they go to networking because they want to do business. I've picked up a bit of work there. Like, that's big. Successful people don't think like that. They think about partnerships. How can I increase my network? Who can I leverage that kind of conversation off of? And now, like today, there's going to be 60 people in there today, and that power in energy in the room is pretty kind of addictive, I suppose.
Yeah, it's amazing. And so I love the way that you've disrupted the office space. You know, before COVID as well, this was coming. So, and obviously COVID's changed a lot of working from home kind of ways. So, you know, the drive to be able to do that is, you know, hats off to you, Liam. And from my view of the old Bond store, so I came in, I don't know, it was like March, April of that time around lockdown. I was spending a lot of time working on my own. And I got introduced by Sam Griffiths, and said, "Come along." And I remember that changed my whole mindset. I remember actually the first time we met, we stood at the bar, and I've been doing the same what you said earlier, working in coffee shops, and quite often in a coffee shop, you know, you've got kids running around, you've got noise, you're trying to be on a Zoom call. I even remember going to a Weatherspoons once and working in a Weatherspoons.
I used to use the Weatherspoons. It's the free refills.
Yeah.
And you're not under pressure to buy a coffee.
Yeah, but then you got someone shouting at someone else, and, you know, all this stuff going on, and you're trying to be professional. And I remember the first time we stood at the bar in the old Bond store, and we had a coffee or a drink, and, you know, we both just opened up about our business failures, and it was such a breath of fresh air to be able to just speak to somebody that understood business, because quite often as business owners we go around, don't we, and we talk to people, or we take our problems home, and it's not relatable, and it's so good to be able to come somewhere and be able to talk to other people that understand and build that network up. And, you know, as I say, it's an inspirational story that you're telling us here, and the journey that you've been on.
I think so how a business owner, and everyone will relate to this, so basically you've got your wife or husband who don't really want to know the bad news.
Yeah.
So they want to hear the good stuff, which is great when you've had a good week. When you've had a shit one, it's not worth kind of opening up another kind of set of problems. You've got your friends when you've had mild success that are going, "Well, you're all right. What are you moaning about? Like, I can't even pay my electric this week," and stuff like that, which I've been there, but they don't want to hear that. Then you've got your staff and your colleagues who are agendas. They've got their own journeys that is you're driving forward. So that's a difficult one. And I think I've got this weird, the relationships that get formed at Old Bonsor is kind of another tier of people that exist in your world that are not friends. They don't really, the challenge with your close community is they're going to have an agenda on their views. But these people, I want you to succeed, but it doesn't really affect me massively if you don't. So the advice that I'm going to give you is agendaed in that it's based on my experiences, but actually a member came in the other day and said, I've got this, what do you think about this? And I'm like, well, it's pretty obvious to me, but they're so close to it. They're so close to it. I don't think I should get rid of him because he's done this. And my wife went to his school with his sister, And I was like, everything you've told me, if I was the other side of this conversation, you'd be telling me to get, I would, wouldn't I? Yeah. But then you go then. I don't even know this guy. I don't care. Yeah. And that business owners are really lonely.
Yeah.
And that's always going to be there. And a lot of people go, but people expect an ROI of that type of experience, because as a business owner, you need to justify it on the P&L or to colleagues and stuff like that. And that's difficult for us to explain that.
Yeah, it definitely is, because the ROI for me is the feeling. It's feelings. It's more internal. I know that there is people doing business and they're getting ROIs from it, but there's so many different versions of ROI. I mean, for me, I remember being through lockdown, spending a lot of time in my office at my tree surgery business on my own, and by lunchtime, my morale and my motivation for the day is starting to dwindle because I'm on my own and I'm a people person. I remember as soon as I came to the Old Bond store, just a smile across someone in the other room or just a quick chat at a coffee machine suddenly lifts you. And that's the kind of real difficult, isn't it, to get that ROI, to get people to understand what that can do for people, what that can do for your mentality, your morale, and for people that are working for you within the Old Bond store as well.
I don't think people's health, their mental state, people don't appreciate. If you run a car on high revs all the time, it's good, the engine's going to wear out quicker. We speak about this all the time.
Yeah.
And I find the people we do attract are very aware of their own self-development and their own, and I think it's a lot to do with the failures. If they've had a few bumps in the road, they're actually aware that they need to be functioning on a certain level. And it could be as little as just a conversation. We get confused a lot. So you talked about the office conversation. I couldn't give a shit about offices. I've got no interest in it. The business was built when everyone loved offices. Yeah. So now I'm getting sucked into those conversations, which we're happy to help. I mean, lots of our members are getting rid of offices and we're supporting them, but I don't care. The business that we've built isn't about the building or the facilities or where you work. I've decided that everyone can work everywhere and it's only going to get more efficient. What my job is to provide people with a home where that they can have proper conversations. And one thing I will say is, you're a co-worker. I get you. We use the word, well, no, we're a club working space. Whereas that's the same thing. It's not. Our clients tend to turn over. They've been in business 3 to 5 years generally. They're on a trajectory and they're already doing good stuff. If you're going to a networking event to try and sell a photocopier, you're fucked anyway. If you can't create a sales funnel that allows you to sell the odd photocopier, and so our members aren't looking to make sales. They're already past that. All they need is a bit of emotional support, a bit of someone just to talk to about ideas, and just some knowledge sharing, really. And that's our responsibility. And when startups turn up at the thing, I sit with them, I'm like, you've got so much. You're not going to get the benefit here because you've got so much to get in place before you even start. And can I suggest a mentor or someone like that for the next 18 months? Because your productization, you know yourself, like unless you know what you're selling. We had someone the other day, I'm a coach. Okay, you're a coach. Wow, I've got this idea. My day rate's going to be this. And we'd worked out that they'd need to generate in their funnel 100 customers a year on their own, paying probably 1,500 quid over a 12-week period. The metric just didn't work.
Yeah.
Because if they were delivering the service, it wouldn't have worked. And that's not where our demographic can really add value. But if they were 3 years down the line, they had 2 or 3 staff and they've got those sort of issues, it's a slightly different experience. And what I found when we were designing it, there's nowhere else in the country that hits that mark. And we've got businesses that we lose them when they get to kind of eight figures. They need a slightly different. I mean, emotionally, we still address that need, but once we start communicating with PAs and we start to get into the further layers of my FD'd like to use it, she'd like to use it, or something like that, then we start to lose that kind of relationship a little bit, really. So yeah, but no, it's been good. We're still not making any money, so we're still and every time we kind of feel like we're going to make money, we up the offer. We start to do breakfasts and things like that. But I met somebody who is the CEO of one of the really cool gym brands in London.
Yeah,
been in the fitness industry for like 20 years. Met him this week, and came out of that like pumped, like almost like, because I've been looking at the office industry. It's so far away from where we're going as a collective of people protecting their own interest. And I just came out from that and I was like, right, this is all about brand, lifestyle. And that's the dial we're going to dial up. And the gym industry now is where I think we're going to start to model the offer. But the plan is just to produce the biggest ecosystem on the South Coast, maybe the UK. It's probably going to be asset backed, going back to my original point.
Love that. So you're going to create more Old Bond stores in other locations?
Yeah, so basically, if you forget about it as an asset, as somewhere to work, because I've decided that we're not going to keep people interested on that. So we need to find locations that. One of the things that's different to online and LinkedIn and all that other stuff is that physical in the room bit that we're doing now.
Yeah.
And as COVID has come out the other side, the people that are getting on the front foot with that and having way more success on their journey by making that effort. So for me, it's that in the room experience to harbour that interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And then we're starting to introduce like a feedback loop where we're starting to review what people are doing, the conversations that Bein had and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm not precious. I'm 42 now. I said to my wife the other day, like, I lost 10 years of learning, and that goes back to the mentorship and getting people around you. Like, I think we said yesterday, didn't we? 10 years.
Yeah, 10 years. I was the same, lost 10 years. And so do you have mentors now?
Yes. Well, I've got an amazing peer-to-peer group, best one in the area.
Yeah.
If I'm honest.
Yeah.
Yesterday, like 2 hours, I learned some new stuff. We were just talking just now about like some technology and stuff like that. I've got a chap called Andy who I've worked with for 7-8 years. And he's a good someone as a feedback loop. Richard, obviously. The challenge with me and Richard and a lot of business partners, we've been together so long that I know what he's thinking. But the challenge is when you've been together so long, it's probably the same as what you're thinking.
Yeah.
And a lot of business, I've got my business partner, I spoke to him, or the mentor's my dad. I see that a lot. My dad, he's done it, he's been there, done. I'm sure he has, but has he done it in today's world?
But they're still emotionally attached, you know. And I know Andy, and you know, you get real, you know, unemotional advice from a mentor that's not emotionally connected to you as well.
And also as well, that selection of that mentor, you have to get on with emotionally because they have to understand what you're going through. I mean, there's been times you touch the laptop. So tell me about like what's going on with that. But also don't be scared to call them out. Like, I don't agree. Like, he said some stuff the other day. I don't agree with that. And sometimes, but they're my mentor. They've been there, done it. Yeah, but they don't know everything. And they don't live in today's world. There's been a massive shift since COVID. Like, some of the younger members that are having success now, they're operating in a totally different structure to what me and you would have done 10, 15 years ago. So you've got to be open to the advice, but you've also got to make some massive decisions on where it's coming from. And any business owner now, that advice, you need to make sure that it's coming from somebody that knows what they're talking about and is aligned with what you're trying to do. Because the Old Bond Store as a project, people laughed at me like 3 years ago, and they're the same people now that want to talk to us about it. And you've got to feel confident in your own skin, but you've got to get the advice around you. Like the chap in the gym, I said to him, what happens when you open a new venue? Like no one might not turn up. Oh yeah, no, we just do this, and this. Tell me how that works. Yeah.
Yes, that's the inquisitive way again, isn't it? Asking those questions, which is so important. So would you say you're constantly evolving and failing forward then?
It's weird, actually. Yes. I'm 42 now, and I feel like a 21-year-old. I'm not going to be a multimillionaire, and I don't actually care as I'm 42. And I was talking to my wife the other day, and she said, look, Liam, with this journey, I'm so passionate about Old Bond Store because what it represents, we're now living a different life to what we used to live. It's not about where you work. It's more than that. And me trying to work out in my own mind, failing forward, but managing that forward journey to suit me personally. I've got a camper van. Absolutely love my camper van. I've got enough money that I don't need to keep pushing, but I've got that personality that I want to keep pushing. Yeah. So at 42, managing the next 10 years of my own excitement is going to be the biggest challenge, because I'm not scared to fail. It doesn't really bother me. And just not getting back to where in that administrator's office is really. Yeah. I'm happy to sleep on people's floors, but I don't want to go and see the administrator again.
Love that. So, I just want to say my experience at the Old Bond Store and being a member of it is just, it's been out of this world. I've met investors through it. I've met business. I love the fact that people are also celebrating each other's wins. You know, you see someone doing really well and you're like, it makes you buzz when you see someone doing really, really well. And I think that's sometimes a difference. I know when I went through my failure, there was lots of daggers being thrown from people that weren't in business. They almost lapped it up. But you know, what you've created in the Old Bond Store is there's people there pulling people up when the shit's hitting the fan. And also when you're also doing really well, there's people there to celebrate with you. And it makes that, as you say, lonely business place a lot less lonely. Yes. Because you can have those ups and have those downs, and you're being pulled up all the time and celebrated. So yeah, I absolutely commend you.
I think British culture is, you like, when someone's doing well, you want them to fail. There's a natural instinct, like the wankers. Like you see the people like with the Ferrari are wankers, but like I think what we want to harbour as a culture. You're absolutely right in that everyone how are you getting on? I mean, I had a little WhatsApp message with someone yesterday, one of the members, absolute top bloke, ultra successful. How are you getting on? And he said, I've had a monumental load of shit going on in the last week. He said, but now's not the time on WhatsApp. Let's grab a beer in the next couple of weeks. And I'll look forward to that. And I won't be going there jealous of his successes. I'll be going there trying to pick apart. Because if it's 100 million or £10, it's still the same stress. It don't really matter. And you're right, it's about picking people up, but it's just a lot of people, certainly in British culture, we rather criticise people and not people for trying.
Yeah, definitely. What would you say to listeners that have got a fear of failing?
I always say to people, worst case scenario. So worst case scenario. So what happens is when it goes belly up, as you know, you start to map out the worst case scenario. So when you go into a decision, I got a bank loan, right? My dad took it and off he went abroad, and I'm paying that for 5 years. What's the worst case scenario? And I think that's that will conquer the fear of failure, because it's never as bad as you think. I think Tim Ferriss said, like, he used to sleep. I mean, I wouldn't do that. Why would you do that? It's mental. But you sleep on someone's floor once every 2 months just to remind yourself it's not that bad. Yeah, you might have a bad night's sleep, but you still got a roof over your head. Yeah. So the you have the mindset you're going to fall right to the bottom, but you're probably not really. If you lose 50 grand, you work it out. And yeah, so I'd say don't fear it. Just work out the worst case scenario, and that's your worst case scenario.
Yeah,
build from there.
Love that. Inspirational. Cool. Well, I think we're coming to the end of this interview. It's been amazing, and I love your story, and really look forward to seeing how the Old Bond Store evolves even more to the future. So how can people connect with you? And also, if people are in and around Southampton want to come and experience the Old Bond Store, how would they get in contact?
Well, funnily enough today, so myself, LinkedIn. Yeah, I'm annoyingly loud on LinkedIn. because of the educational piece, the messaging. So just hook up with me on LinkedIn. With regards to our bond store, we're very shortly going to be going member only introductions, not because we're arrogant and we're pompous. It's just to maintain the value and to protect the ecosystem. I think we're at about 70-80% occupancy now. But on our website, there is a register for information piece. Just go on there, and go and find a member to be introduced by, because it's a small thing, and we'll go from there.
Cool. All right. So I'll put the links in this episode for everybody to go through. Have you got any final words you'd like to say to the audience?
No, it's good. It's good to talk to you, Henry. And obviously, I've been on your journey and been privy to it. And I wish you all the best with all this. It's really great. And thank you to Andy as well. It's a lovely setup here. Anyone that would be interested in doing this, that's amazing. But thank you very much.
Cool. Thanks, Liam. Thanks for having you. So thank you, viewers and everyone listening, for being part of the Fail Forward podcast. So the next episode is going to be about accountability, which, if you remember, is the first step of getting over failure. So we're going to do a deep dive into accountability and how that works and why it's very, very important in getting over failure. So I'd just like to thank Liam again for being part of the first interview of Fail Forward podcast. If you like what you've heard today, please like and subscribe on whatever channel it is that you're listening, and I shall see you on the next episode.